Hey, Wembrook World Entertainment, and of course Predator Badlands is out. All the interviews and stuff now are coming out, so they all pretty much have the spoilers in it for reasons best known to themselves. I don't understand that. A movie comes out on a Friday and by the Monday all the articles have all the spoiler interviews, even the spoilers in their title. It's like, why would you do that? But anyway, Dan Trachtenberg, obviously he's doing the rounds, and we did a video about him talking about the original idea was to have it set in World War II and stuff like that. But now he's talking about basically the ending of this movie. He was talking a lot. There's an interview at Variety. You can head to Variety and have a look at the full thing if you want. But there's interesting snippets in here, including cameos, voice cameos, that I didn't know about, and I'm sure you guys didn't know about, as well as James Cameron, how his name is in the credits, why that's there, and he does talk about the ending. So I suppose if you haven't seen the movie and you don't know about that spoiler, I suppose, potential spoiler, even though it's pretty much a cliffhanger type thing. But we'll start off with, now I'm not going through the whole interview and stuff, because a lot of the questions are about the creature designs and stuff like that. It's interesting enough, but it's not the meat of what I want to get to. So we'll start with this question that he was asked about. How did James Cameron come to be listed in the special thanks in the end credits? So he said this. It came in two forms, he said. He had seen Prey and loved it, which there's no words for that. We shot Badlands in New Zealand, up in Auckland, and he was down in Wellington making Avatar. He invited me to see him doing some of Avatar, and we spent some time on his soundstage, and when we were in the edit bay, I pitched him what we were doing with the movie. This brand new process, having a guy in a prosthetic suit and then visual effects are taking over for his face. Then we reconvened at dinner, and when he sat down, he said, I was thinking about what you're doing on the way over here, and I gotta tell you, think it's gonna work. That blew wind in my sails all the way back to Auckland. Then, when we were finishing the movie, the cut was in pretty good shape, not totally finished, but pretty good. I wanted to send it his way to get, if he had the time, whatever feedback he could give. He wrote me a note back that said many things, and one of them was, I have to tell you, when I first heard about what you're doing, I did not think it was going to work, but holy crap, you really pulled it off. And that put wind in my sails. I think he just knows exactly what someone needs to hear when they need to hear it. He's just a tremendously generous filmmaker. So apparently he sent them the movie and asked them for some notes on it, apparently. Now, he doesn't say whether or not he gave feedback in terms of, I would change this and do that. But he's been told, like, he told him, oh, you nailed it and stuff like that. Did he? He probably did, but did he actually think they nailed it? Who knows? This part is very interesting. So, the question put to him was, you were going to direct season 5 of Stranger Things before the strikes changed their schedule. But how did you wind up using the show's creators, Matt and Ross Duffer, as the voice of the computer on Deck's ship? So, if you didn't know, of course, the movie, they're saying Deck's ship. It wasn't his ship, it's his brother's ship. The voice on it was both Matt and Ross Duffer, the Duffer brothers. Now, I had no idea that they weren't supposed to film season 5 of Stranger Things. Dan Trachtenberg apparently was, but he ended up using them as the voice. So here is how that came about. He says, we were mixing Badlands on the very same stages where they were mixing Stranger Things at the same time. We had some of the same sound mixers working on both. We needed to do the Yautja ship voice, and I was like, what if I asked the Duffers to do it? How crazy would that be? They had no idea that I was going to hand him a piece of paper with like NGILA is a word. Good luck. They had to very quickly learn Yautja. The computer voice is heavily treated and needs to sound affected. So actually smearing their voices together and then doing other stuff in the computer made the perfect voice. So if you didn't know, folks, now you do. The voice on Deck's ship, or his brother's ship, was both the Duffer Brothers' voices mashed together and computer effects put on it. Now, this part's interesting. By the way, this, you've seen it in the thumbnail, I forgot to say it in the, we finally get a timeline for this thing, and it's actually quite surprising. So, next question was, since Badlands integrates the Alien universe, did you figure out when in time your movie is in relation to the other movies in both franchises? So they're asking, do you where in the timeline from both the Predator franchise and Alien franchise is your movie set? So this is when we get that answer. He says, very intentionally, it is the furthest into the future in both Predator and Alien. When we were making it, I wasn't really sure what was going on with Alien Romulus, and I don't even know how aware I even was of Alien Earth, so I just didn't want to step on anyone's toes. I wanted to make sure we were doing our own thing, and selfishly, I'd also done so much Predator in different time periods that I was excited for this to be in the future, even past Alien Resurrection. So what we've just found out, people, is the movie is set well beyond Alien Resurrection. So is Ripley out there? Probably not. And obviously from the Predator franchise, it's never been further away from that it's ever been. So now we're kind of getting into the spoiler stuff. So if you didn't see Predator Badlands, you don't know about the ending and all that type of stuff, now is the time to click off. If you don't care, stick around, but if you're gonna click off, cheers for being here. Like, share and subscribe and all that good stuff, and at least you found some interesting things out, like the Duffer Brothers cameoed, and now you know the time period for this. So again, full spoiler for the ending of Badlands, so you've been warned. So here we go. At the very end of Badlands, a ship containing Deck's mother appears on the horizon. Are you deliberately setting up how you'd want the franchise to continue, with Deck confronting his mother as we meet female Yautja for the first time? So he said, what I love about that ending is that it works as a final twist on the story that we've just been seeing, but also sets up an expectation for something that I think is pretty groovy. If I were to go forward, which I think that's an interesting statement, if I were to go forward, I don't think that would be the whole reason, but that would be a very cool element to include. It's interesting to hear how he says that. If I were to go forward, not when I go forward and stuff, if I were to go forward. So it's not even if I go forward, it's if I were to go forward. That sounds like he's not planning on doing more. So it says, and you'd want to continue with Deck's story. So this is what he said about that. What's so great is we now have all these interesting characters, and who knows what the next one is. I didn't know the next one was going to be Killer of Killers or Deck's story, and then it ended up we doing both at the same time. There's many open doors to walk through next, that's for sure. So what he's talking about now is the issue I've had with everything he's been doing so far, which is all of these movies are pretty much unfinished stories. Yes, there is a story that's contained within them, but the overall story and character that you're with is an unfinished story. And that's now 3 for 3. Prey ended on pretty much a cliffhanger with the end credits showing you that there was meant to be a Predator invasion. And of course, Naru with the flintlock. So you know something has to happen there for the Predators to get the flintlock. Killer of Killers ended on the cliffhanger of the last 2 guys the samurai and the fighter pilot escaping while the Viking one is put on ice. And of course, we saw Naru. I don't care about the Harrigan and Dutch. That wasn't in the version they released to start with, so I'm not counting that part. So that's left on the cliffhanger, and the Predator's going after them. And now Badlands ends on a cliffhanger with he's just defeated the father, and his mother's just shown up. And it ends there. By the way, it's interesting how he talks about that's how he loved the ending for that movie, because he's also done an interview where he said none of this was the end of the movie, including the fight with the father. The fight with the father was supposed to be, he said, you were supposed to see it, the screen kind of start darking out. You hear the clash and you see green blood splatter. And it's to leave you wondering, well, whose blood is it? Who survived and who died? Did Deck beat the father? Did the father beat him? You weren't to know. But test screenings, and he confirmed test screenings, didn't like that ending. They wanted apparently to see more of the father. So that's why you got the ending you did. So where and when then he decided to shove the mother in, don't know. So overall, like, there's a few other things he talks about. And I'll actually read this one because this one is the worrying part. So it says, so how far inside those doors have you looked to start planning where you would want to go? And he said this, it can all go out the door once we start putting pen to paper on stuff. But I've looked as far as I could to feel comfortable about what I'm doing. Every movie is a complete thought. Not that much unlike the early Marvel stuff before the first Avengers movie, where it's like, those are great movies, and lo and behold, we're actually setting up that things could come together in a delicious way. But they weren't like, see how everything's interconnected like crazy all of a sudden. So I'm trying to learn that lesson and make sure that any of these movies that we do are awesome ideas for movies on their own. That part, what he's saying, it goes back to what he said earlier in another interview, which I did the story on, where he was talking about this leading to this Avengers style battle in the end, that he wants all these movies to basically be the setup and that they'll end up coming all together at some stage, which I don't like that idea. I hate that idea. But overall, it's an interesting interview. If you go and look at the whole interview, it is an interesting interview. The biggest thing you'll notice when you read it is how he compares this movie to a shit ton of other movies. Like, he's comparing it from everything from Avengers to Gremlins to Terminator 2. And it's just like, holy hell, this thing has actually no identity of its own. The most interesting things he says, though, is about the timeline, that we now have confirmation that this thing is set well beyond Alien Resurrection, which is interesting. And that the Duffer Brothers, their voices are cameos as the computer on the ship. So I thought that was interesting. So what do you guys think? And again, if you've read the whole interview, let us know what you think of everything he's broken down. And what do you think about the idea of it all coming together to be this Avengers level of event movie, possibly? And of course, let me know what you think about the fact that he's saying if he were to go forward with this, and that there's no guarantee that he's going to continue any of these stories. So let me know. And with that, we shall leave it there for this one. So do like, share, subscribe, and all that good stuff. Cheers. I'll catch you in the next one.